Alrighty, today I want to talk about Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and I do apologize if my voice sounds a little weird today because I currently have a sore throat. I am very, very ill, but I still want to talk about Eternal Sunshine because I have, Eternal Sunshine fever. I love this movie. So to start off with, this movie stars Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet, and this is actually one of the earliest art films I saw in my life as a young teen, and rewatching this movie as I've grown up made me realize that I never actually understood this film back when I first watched it when I was like 14 or something, and being able to have more life experience when rewatching this turned this film into a completely different experience, as I was able to resonate more with the characters and themes this time around. And this film is very relatable, and I'm just going to say spoilers right now because once I give the plot summary, I will spoil the movie, as part of the experience of watching this is kind of figuring out what is going on in the plot. So if you haven't already seen this film, then click off this video and go watch it, then come back. And trust me, you will not regret it. I'm only including this part because I know some of my friends and also my family may be watching this, so, please click off the video and watch the film if you haven't already. Don't just watch this just to hear my voice, because I know most of you, have probably already seen this movie, but to my friends and family, please don't be one of those people that's just like, oh, I just want to hear you talk, because I do not care, watch this movie. Anyways, this movie starts with two people falling in love with each other, only to then realize that they were previously already in love with each other, but they broke up, and so they decided to erase each other from their minds because they were so upset and heartbroken. And of course, this film exists in a universe where a company actually does provide that service to people, which is very much a Charlie Kaufman staple to include bizarre and surreal things into the film's universe. Being John Malkovich is very similar in that there just happens to be a portal into John Malkovich's brain which exists in this universe. There just is some kind of crazy technology that exists. Now, it's important to note that Kaufman only wrote the screenplays of these movies, as Spike Jonze directed adaptation and Being John Malkovich, and Michel Gondry directed Eternal Sunshine. And it wasn't until 2008 when Kaufman finally decided to direct his first feature film, which is Synecdoche, New York, which is also one of my favorite movies and also very creative, just like this movie. But yeah, I wanted to highlight this because Kaufman is such a great screenwriter, and this film feels very much like him despite it being directed by someone else. Not to put down Michel Gondry, he's also a great director too, and I don't think this movie could have been what it was if Charlie Kaufman directed it at this time with his inexperience, because Michel Gondry had experience directing music videos and such, and that definitely shows in how just creative and surreal this film can get. So big props to Michel Gondry for adding his staple in there. It's very much feels like a Michel Gondry film, but also it really feels like a Kaufman film as well. It's a perfect blend of talent here. And this film is very weird and very unconventional, which is why I love it so much. And it's interesting going back to the marketing of this film and seeing how they try to portray this film as some box it in as a generic romantic comedy, trying to box it into a genre that would appeal to Jim Carrey fans, as it's oh, this is just him doing his same shtick again. It's a romantic comedy with Kate Winslet. And they even play Mr. Blue Sky in the trailer to give it a lighter tone. And before watching this trailer for the first time today, I was always confused why Mr. Blue Sky was on the film soundtrack, because Eternal Sunshine has one of the best scores ever with multiple orchestrated tracks which are just extremely memorable and purposeful. As it's just one of those soundtracks I always go back to, but then randomly Mr. Blue Sky starts playing and I'm confused because I do not remember the song ever showing up in the film. Maybe this is a Mandela effect going on. I'm just living in a parallel universe where Mr. Blue Sky is in Eternal Sunshine, but I just don't remember. But nope, it is because it's featured in the trailer, with Jim Carrey acting all crazy and zany to deceive people into thinking this is some kind of wacky romantic comedy. You have Kirsten Dunst dancing in her underwear, you have Elijah Wood showing up with those googly glasses. It's really trying to deceive people into thinking this is a film that it isn't. The trailer makes this film look like shit, and this film is not shit. The actual film is way more interesting than what that trailer would lead you to believe. And Eternal Sunshine is actually able to blend so many different genres together, from romance to science fiction. And I want to talk about the visuals and special effects for a second, because they are very creative and inventive, as I've mentioned, and the transitions from one memory to another is so seamless. The way the text from the billboards and signs will disappear in the background as the scene is progressing to show that this memory is being erased is so subtle but also really brilliant. And other things too, the use of shallow focus on Kate Winslet and her voice becoming more and more distorted as characters are arguing to show that she's being erased from his memory, is really cool. And how the memory that we are currently experiencing is in the process of being deleted. Like, little subtle details like that are so cool. And that's just like one small example I picked. There are like tons of examples like that. Another cool like transition I wanted to highlight is that scene where Joel is leaving the bookstore and you can see the lights go out behind him, and then he goes through a door, and suddenly we're in the next scene where he's at his friend's house, who is of course David Cross's character in Jane Addams, I believe. And this transition is also really seamless, and it is a practical shot, which makes it really impressive. And if it wasn't like the fact that he did it practically in camera and not through CGI. I also like the decision to have the previous memory versions of themselves not being played by children the whole time, because the scene with Jim Carrey under the table could have been a disaster if you got a real kid there. But yeah, that's a really cool decision. And even when they do have real kids there, but you still get that Jim Carrey voiceover, and they switch between the real kids and Jim Carrey, like it works on that dream logic, which makes sense for the movie. Another cool thing is that a lot of this has that kind of like guerrilla style filmmaking to it, because Michel Gondry, just like, since it was a smaller production, a lot of things that you see, like them playing in the snow or the elephant parade, that happened because there was actually a real parade just going on in New York, and Michel Gondry's like, hey, let's just like film here. And those little flashes you can see are actually from like the paparazzi trying to get shots of Jim Carrey, because they just filmed it like just on the fly, which is really cool. Like, it's really cool when you have that kind of just freedom to do that on a small production that isn't like a Hollywood thing. Again, this movie is so creative and so well thought out. Like, the rules of the brain procedure are really, again, as I've said, well thought out, and I love how easily they describe how this memory erasure thing works. As the doctor says, oh, it is brain damage, but it's comparable to like a night of heavy drinking, nothing that you won't miss, which is just a brilliant line of dialogue. Let's talk about the performances for a second, because the two leads completely disappear into their roles. Jim Carrey is great at delivering more dramatic material, as he's very sympathetic here, and even though the two lead actors are huge stars, I do not see Jim Carrey or Kate Winslet when I watch this film. I just see the characters, and Jim Carrey's playing a very different character here than he's like ever played before, or even after this film. And look, I love The Truman Show as much as the next guy, but honestly, nothing compares to his performance in Eternal Sunshine. Like, his soft-spokenness and insecurities feel very genuine in the mannerisms and the way he speaks, and this is easily my favorite performance from him. And oh my god, like, as I talk about this movie, I just want to go back and rewatch it. Like, it is that good. And a part of why this film is able to resonate with so many people is because of that creative framing device of someone wanting to erase their memories, because of course the memories someone would want to remove are those intimate and dramatic moments, because those are the most memorable things that we experience in life. And a lot of the details surrounding like the technology are explored in a lot of detail, like the implications of like if this technology actually existed in that world and how like people would react to it, as Elijah Wood's character is someone who would totally exist in the real world. He's a creepy dude, his name's Patrick, and he exploits this memory erasing procedure to manipulate Kate Winslet's character into falling in love with him by impersonating Joel through all these like memories and mementos. And yeah, Patrick is a really realistic character, as the things he says and the way he acts is definitely the type of behavior that I've seen in other people and just like my life. Like his line about, oh, this place is a real dump when he's in Joel's apartment. I know why he says that. It's like, it's a way for him to get reinsurance that he's a better partner for Clementine than Joel when he's in his apartment, and he's hoping that Mark Ruffalo will give him some kind of like reinsurance for that, like he will agree with him. But instead he refutes that by saying, oh, look, it's just like an apartment or whatever. So yeah, scumbag. The cyclical framework is also very clever in how it starts with them falling in love without knowing that they were already together before, and then it ends with them getting back together even after knowing of that breakup. Like, that structure makes you want to watch it again now that you understand this framework. When you first watch it, you'll probably be very confused, like, what is going on? What? They're like together? And then suddenly this memory erasure thing's happening, like, whoa, I just don't get it. This is confusing. Why is he crying? But once you finish it on your first watch, you're like, oh, now I get it. And that's why you want to watch it again, to like, now that you have that full like context of like knowing what the film is about. And the film is actually like pretty short in its runtime. It's only an hour and 47 minutes long, so like, why not watch it again? Like, what else am I doing today, you know? Again, I have Eternal Sunshine fever, but I can't watch the film again because I have to record and edit this video and get it out. But yeah, there are a lot of subtle details in the opening sequence which I love too, like when he's writing in his journal and says, oh, it appears that this is my first entry in 2 years. And it's like, at first, when you first watch that, you don't think anything of it. Then your second watch, you're like, oh shit, yo, that's cool. And when he's on the beach in Montauk and is next to the abandoned house, you can hear a very subtle audio cue of Kate Winslet's voice, which is really quiet and really echoey. Again, there's that whole idea of like there is something beckoning Joel to this beach, a voice calling out to him, because even though they erased each other from their brains, they still loved each other so much that their brains tried to keep something of each other in other parts of their brain, so they both know that there is something missing, which is why they both have that desire to go to Montauk. And the performances demonstrate this really well too, with Kate Winslet's expressions of like experiencing some sort of deja vu when Patrick is doing that really creepy thing of reciting Joel's words to her, and she's like, what the fuck, this is weird, this is strange, I don't like this. There's just something in her subconscious that knows there is something fucked up about this current situation, and I find that whole thing about just their brains and like they know something is missing, which is why they feel lost, and that's why they go to Montauk. I find that really interesting. If we're talking about that Patrick scene in the frozen lake, let's just talk about the symbolism of the frozen lake, because it is on the film's poster, so it probably means something deep. Now, the way I read it as like a metaphor for their relationship, is Joel is initially afraid to walk on the frozen lake because, you know, the ice, it can easily fall apart, you know, which, you know, is kind of like similar to relationships. They can easily fall apart. But as Joel walks on the ice with Clementine, he becomes more comfortable with taking this risk. And it's also an important character defining moment for them, as Joel's a very introverted and will probably prefer to stay inside type of character. But Clementine pushes him to do more exciting things, and even though it is scary, it turns out to go okay because they are with each other. And I mean, I also love the poster too, like the way it's framed with Jim Carrey at the front, with the blue background at the bottom, and the ice at the top resembles like a thought bubble, and the fracture on the ice could represent like a fractured mind from the brain operation, which that's really cool. One of my favorite posters. And the opening highlights how lonely and lost Joel feels, with his voiceover saying how much he hates Valentine's Day, and it's just like saying cynical stuff like, oh, it's invented by green card companies to make people feel like crap. And again, just having that really cynical view. This film is definitely pessimistic, but it is also hopeful because it does show that relationships are hard to maintain, but there is hope too, because in the end, they do decide to go through with it all over again, even though they know they're going to encounter some difficulties along the way. But that pain of, you know, just like being in a relationship, it will be worth it because of how special those good parts are. And I think the ending is perfect, where the characters just say, okay, and they just start laughing, and then the music starts playing like, oh my god, bruh, it could not be any better. Like, what really made me tear up was when Joel finds himself in a memory that he doesn't want to get rid of, because even though he's erasing the painful memories, he's also erasing the good parts of their relationship too, and that sucks. And he starts regretting the procedure immediately, and he starts begging and pleading. And yeah, I feel like one of the big themes of this movie is it is better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all. And another emotional moment is his last memory, when he comes to terms with what's happening, and he decides to stay in that house, and just like the symbolism of that. And after that point, the story kind of deflates until we get to the whole like Kirsten Dunst subplot unraveling, and her character, you know, mailing out all those tapes to people. And then we get that new drama of like the characters listening to themselves at their worst point, just describing everything they hate about their partner, but they don't have any memory of each other. So it's just a really strange scenario to try to put yourself in. Joel doesn't even realize what he was getting himself into with this whole procedure, as it was a very impulsive decision from like both him and Clementine, as they were both doing it just because they were hurt. And when he recorded all of that on the tape of how he's like sick of her and that she needs to fuck other people in order for them to like her, like, I find that really realistic, because like being hurt by someone can really affect your overall perception of them in the moment, and like your emotions are basically a lens for how you act and recontextualize memories. And he ends up regretting the procedure almost immediately because he does love her, and they're kind of perfect for each other in a way, because they're both outcast characters that find each other at that social gathering, not really wanting to talk to anybody, which is why they get on so well, because they're both weirdos. The ending is really interesting because we don't know what really happens to the characters afterwards, and throughout the film, even though we see that there are like a perfect like yin and yang to each other and they do love each other, they do exhibit toxic traits, like they are toxic people. And so hopefully like when those start to show up again down the line in their like new relationship, they can start to work through that and not repeat those same mistakes. But again, the ending is open-ended because, again, we don't know what happens to characters afterwards, so you never know. There may not be a happy ending for this couple, and they could just repeat those same mistakes over and over again and just end up miserable. But I mean, at least they'll keep the memories. Unless they repeat that brain procedure again, then really it's just like a never-ending cycle. You know, it's just like they're 60 years old and like, oh, we're meeting for the first time again. Like, that could be another possible ending for this movie. That could be the sequel. But, yeah. But yeah, this movie's really relatable, and we've all been through a breakup. I mean, I haven't, but one day I will. And finally, I don't know, this video is kind of loose. I'm kind of just like talking about random things. So another cool thing I want to talk about snow on the beach. And no, not the Taylor Swift song, but the location of like snow on the beach in this film, with the house crumbling at the end, because, I don't know, snow on the beach is like, it's a cool thing to look at. And maybe they just include that because, again, snow on the beach looks cool, but I like to think that there's some symbolism behind that, because the symbolism seems pretty important, because like a beach is meant to be happy and warm, but then there's a layer of snow on top and it's like cold and miserable, and you can interpret that for, as I've said, like how emotions can act as a lens and cloud your judgment, and how we've once viewed these intimate and happy memories of someone as like positive things, but now we view them negatively now after a breakup, and you have this clouded perception of someone from the past because of how you are currently upset with them. Like those memories, they were once positive, but now you just think negatively of them because, again, you were just hurt, you were upset. And I think that is some beautiful imagery. Snow on the beach. A lot of this movie is really well thought out, including the dialogue too, as there is that great line where Clementine says she is not just some concept. And I feel like in a lot of movies, women are often, especially if it's like a film written by a man, directed by a man, even though this film is written by a man and directed by a man, Charlie Kaufman is just a genius though, and he doesn't like, what I'm trying to say is that, you know, women are often depicted as like the manic pixie dream girl, right, where we don't ever see their dysfunctions, and they just exist as like a cartoony trope of a character that is perfect. Whereas here, Clementine feels very much, she feels real, like she is struggling with her own stuff, she doesn't feel like an idealized person, and that's because Charlie Kaufman is a great writer. Like, yeah, he's a man, but, you know, he's also like, he knows people really well, and he knows to write like flaws in his characters, and that Clementine is not just some like perfect person. I also love her character design too, and her like weird sense of style. Like they mention it a lot in the script too, her orange jacket and her different dyed hair. It's so expressive in the visuals, and it looks cool, but it also reveals a lot about the character and helps also keep you in track with the continuity of the film. Like, where are we if her hair is like dyed blue or red? It means that we're in the present or the past. And little things like that help to like make this film feel more accessible and not confusing. And the orange sweatshirt also just makes her stick out from the crowd, showing that she's the light of Joel's life, kind of like she is the vibrant color in this dreary, overcast setting. She really sticks out in the crowd, and that's why Joel is attracted to her, like, emotionally, because like everything else looks so cold and bleak, but then there's Clementine who kind of brightens things up for him, you know. I believe that's what that color, you know, visual thing symbolizes, and yeah. But yeah, I relate to this movie a lot, even though I haven't been in a romantic relationship. I can relate to that, like, desire of, like, wanting to forget an event, you know, just, like, struggling with your mind and feelings of loss. As one of the customers that we see here has a dog bone, showing how she lost a dog, so I like how this movie, it's not just showing that, oh, these people wanted to do this, like, memory erasing procedure. You know, it's not just people wanting to forget their ex, but it's just loss in general, you know? And really, time is the only thing that heals rather than, you know, brain damage. But yeah, really love this movie. 10 out of 10. One of my favorites of all time. Oh my god. If for some reason you watch this video and you haven't even seen the movie, what are you doing? Watch it. It is, it's too good. It's too good. And yeah, that is all I have to say. I'm ill. Give this video a like and share. Comment down below. Let me know what you think of Eternal Sunshine. If you've got any other kind of just like interpretations or like favorite moments from the film, let me know and I'll read those. And yeah, maybe follow me on like Twitter. Like, I want to like build a fan club, but I've barely got any followers, which is very sad. But yeah, that's basically all I wanted to say. And yeah, peace.